Hey everybody, you guys have been asking for it. Let's laser engrave a 2D sign together. So this is what I mean by 2D engraving, that I'm laser engraving at different levels. And I'm going to show you guys how to do this. And I'm also going to upload these files for free for you guys to be able to do these signs as well. Now I realize not everybody's into minions. So that's why I decided to design up a few different ideas for you to give a test with the settings and the techniques that I use that I'm about to give you in this video. So you'll get different layers that you'll be engraving, plus you'll be getting test templates, okay, to line up your boards perfectly. So I also included an Area 51 sign. Now, what are its uses? Well, you can 2D engrave, well, Christmas signs, Halloween signs, house number signs, and you can paint them. But also, you're going to learn the technique to do deeper engravings that give you a CNC or a sandblasted look. Now, what you're going to need is a 7x12 pine, spruce, or fir. Now, cedar will require lower settings because cedar engraves just lovely. But all of these are softer woods, and they're great for engraving. Now, before we get started, today I'm using my OLM3 10-watt laser. But some of the pictures I showed you was my SCULPFUN S30 Pro 10-watt. So with my OLM3, I have my legs, so my machine is raised all the time. Instead of having to raise and lower it, I will raise my material on blocks. Okay, so we're actually going to be doing a test design on the back. So right now I am just kind of lining up the board here, because make sure that your board is level. Okay, in order to make mine level, I know I'm going to have to wedge it up because I've just got a little bit of a bow to the board table that I'm using. But to make sure your machine is level, make sure with the OLM3, we have this little kickstand that comes up, which is for the focus. Okay, make sure you measure in at least 4 areas to make sure that your material is level. Okay, not just one area. Okay, so this way I knew I needed to wedge up this side in order to get all the edges leveled so that I am getting consistent engraving across the entire board. You're also going to need some paint if you feel like painting your sign. But you're going to have to go to DiSignsCdn to download these files. Like I said, they're absolutely free. You do not need to be a Patreon. I will never ask you guys for money. We're a laser engraving community. But if you ever want to buy me a coffee, hey, I'd appreciate that. Now, you will have to request to join the group. It's just to keep spammers from posting, selling shoes or porn to the site. It's not even good porn. I'm totally kidding there. I'm totally kidding there. But yes, so it is a private group. Now, I just went from our discussion board to our featured board. So featured, you'll be able to see any of my posts. Discussion are any members sharing their posts and designs. If you go to media, you'll see photos, files, designs, and some of the designs that were shared by our laser engraving community as well. And they've done some fantastic stuff. But you'll go to files. So you'll see a number of files that I've uploaded here, and you'll see their names. And you just go over to the right-hand side to these dots and click on that and click on download. Or you can see the original post as well to see if there was any notes put with it. Okay, so that is to your download on your computer. So your download file on your computer. I'm also going to upload these files for you guys to use for free. They're the Handmade with Love testing. Now I realize not all guys are going to want to put that on their board. So comment below what you would like your test files to say there, fellas. Let me know, and I'll get something designed up just for you guys. Now, the reason for little test files is you can do these on the back, and especially with a Handmade with Love or a little heart or your logo, you are testing what your engraving is going to be on the good side. So that's why you can use these little files to engrave, and the customer won't know the difference that you were just testing this. And it's really handy with just one-off material, especially if a customer supplies you with a material. You can use your logo or this on the back to test to see how your laser is going to engrave that material. So as you can see, I'm making multiple files here. So one would be a test part one, a part two, a part three, and you can use these files in LASERGRBL to see how your laser is going to react with certain materials. So you'll see that I am doing grayscale and black and white. So I'm just going to make up a few patterns here that you can use consecutively. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today, but you can use together, okay? And using these patterns together as well will help you to see how well your machine is lining up. So yep, free to use. I'm going to upload those on the DiSignsCdn page as well. So you saw that I started with a master file, and I duplicate these files, and they're all within a white bounding box. But by duplicating, I am making sure that everything will line up perfectly. And right now I'm just taking the love part itself and the heart, making that to grayscale, and moving some of the objects. I'll send those right to the back in order to make my part ones, part twos, and part threes. Once I've got those files all ready for exporting, I'm going to show you how to export. Now I'm going to fast forward throughout this video of any further exporting. Okay. So you'll see I have a white bounding box around it that I've made white with no outline. So I've made a folder. I'm calling it Minion. Now sometimes my preview goes a little wonky, so I just have to switch between the solid and the transparent. So every time I export, I have it on selected objects. I put it on transparent. Don't panic if you cannot make your objects transparent. Okay, some files will export that just with that little white bounding box on solid, so you're fine there. But I do export at 300 dpi, and that keeps any of my designs to scale. So that's why I said to get a 7x12 pine board. That is what I have designed the Minion, the Medusa, and the Area 51 signs at. I would not go any smaller because there is some fine little parts. So get yourself a 7x12. So this is the Evil Genius I decided to make because I wanted a sign on my laser room's door. So this was the idea. I thought everybody could use a sign to warn people, not just to come in, that they should be, warned that they may possibly need eye protection. Okay, covers you guys too, insurance purposes. Woo! So you'll see that I use the original Evil Genius file, and then I've split it into parts of part one, part two of what I'm going to be engraving. And I've exported all these. Now you'll see a little red bounding box around them right now. It's just the red outline because I've yet to just make these boxes white, send them to the back, and get rid of the outline. Okay, we do not want LASERGRBL to notice the outline because it will pick it up and try to engrave it. Now I'm going to actually duplicate the box. So you'll see this is our material size, 7 by 12. I'm just going to put that to black because we are going to be using this as a test for lining up. So we're always engraving from the home position. That's the preferable part, because if you ever lose power or connection, you're able to save your engraving by going to the home part. Now, if the material that you're using is larger, that's when you're going to use the offset. So again, if you have to stop, reset, home your computer or laser engraver, you're going to be able to save that engraving. So it's either home or use the offset. I do not recommend jogging your computer. So like I said, I'm now going to fast forward through all these exporting just to keep this video a little bit shorter because I don't want to keep you guys away from creating. So let's go over some laser engraving theory. So this was a test that I did for some signs that I was doing. I just cropped out a portion of that to be able to test on the same type of material I wanted to use on the sign. So here you'll see, okay, I started at 2,000 millimeters per minute, 95% at the very beginning. With my interactive slider tool in LASERGRBL, while it's engraving, use those sliders. So you'll see I started at 2,000 millimeters here. And as it was going along, I slowly decreased the speed till eventually at the very last, it was only at half speed, which was 1,000 millimeters. I waited for the engraving to finish. And then I went back again, started it at the 2,000 millimeters again, let it run through, and slowly decrease it again. So you'll see I did 2,000 millimeters per second, engraved deeper than what 1,000 millimeters per second or minute would do in one pass. So this is where 2 passes at even a higher speed is better than only 1 pass at a lower speed. Now here's something you're going to have to watch out for, but this is the effect that I wanted. Okay, so technically you'll see around this ring here is the deepest part. And then you'll see, okay, my second level here that looks like a lighter brown is actually deeper than, I'm going to call it, this antler piece. So technically that should be darker, right? Well, it actually was. Now I originally engraved that at 2,000 millimeters per second. I'm going to have to double check that. But then I went over it using just the portion of that file for that level, and I sped it up to 3,500 millimeters per minute. And then it actually engraved off the darker part. So if you're doing multi-levels and you have something that might show up a little darker, redo it at a higher speed and you can engrave off that level. All right, finally, moving on to LASERGRBL. Now I'm using version 6.2.1, and I just used the full screen tab to make it nice and big. So we're going to open part of our love parts. So you'll see I gave you a number of ones to try out. We're going to open up love part 1. Let's make that nice and big. So I have it on smooth. My brightness is about 105. My contrast is 96. And my white clip is set at 0. Now I remember black and white, if you turn black and white on, it's always going to give you your deepest, darkest engraving. But turning that off is going to put that to grayscale mode, and that's what we want to use today. So we're going to use line-to-line tracing, horizontal, and I'm going to use 7 lines. So let's go to next. The engraving speed I'm going to use is 3,000 millimeters per minute. I don't know why I was getting confused with second. So we're going to use dynamic power. My minimum is 5%. My maximum is 95%. I'm going to auto size the first file that I open. Remember, if you unlock that and you make it a certain size, it's going to skew it. So we're going to connect my OLM3. Now it asks me if I want to do Wi-Fi. I never do Wi-Fi. And we're going to home the machine. And the left-hand bottom side here, you'll see me jogging the controls because I'm just on the back of the board right now, deciding where I want to put the logo. And I'm going to make note of top right, the X and the Y of where I jogged it to. Okay, I'm not going to set the origin. I'm going to focus now to make sure that's where I want it to be. I could frame it. But remember, make note of where you jogged up X and Y, because you're going to put that in your offset in the second window. So we'll go open file once again. I'm going to grab the love part 1 again. Open that. We are going to keep all the same settings and click next. And this is where I'm going to type in where I put my X offset and my Y offset. Okay, so X goes to the right-hand side of the laser bed. Y jogs the laser to, say, the back of the laser bed. So there you go. You see, I opened up the file and it's included the offset. So I will home that. I can frame it to see exactly where it is. And the reason I'm using the offset again is because if I decided to use the separate layer files that I'm going to supply you with, you can see that if your machine is lining up and the effects that you're getting with the grayscale. Because remember, this is a text engraving. And because you're not doing it at exactly the home position. So there, you saw by clicking where the G1, GO, where you saw that, this is your interactive slider tool. So your power will lower it. Your linear is the speed at which you're engraving. So you can change these, and this is why it's called interactive. While you're engraving, you can change them, or you can change them before you engrave. Now, if you were having issues with it lining up, you can change that rapid speed to half speed. And you're going to see what I mean later on in the video, because I decided to just go ahead with this first test, and then I moved my work. So don't move your work or turn off your machine at all between each of these passes that we're going to do, okay? It's going to be hard to line up unless you've got a jig where you're butting up against to make sure that you're in the home position constantly. Now, you're welcome to try the File Append feature, which will, after it's done one engraving, do the next engraving to see how accurately your machine is lining up each file. But for today's purposes, we're just going to use the home position and play. This way, we can use the slider features between each pass, because if you do it consecutively, there's that word, you might forget to do the sliders as it's doing another different file pass. Okay? So I did press play and started my file. Now we're just going to fast forward it here so we can take a look at how our test turned out. And here I am fighting with the air hose in my way for my air assist. Okay, so there was a quick peek there. And don't worry, I'm going to show close-ups of any of our further engravings that we're going to do, I was happy with the result there of the first test that we did. So now we are going to open up our material size box. And this is purely to line up our 7x12 pine, spruce, or fir that we're going to be engraving. And so I've got my offset back at 0 because we want to be engraving from the home position. So I've opened up the box. I'm going to connect my machine. All I'm going to do is home it, and I'm going to frame it. So I just use the framing tool when it's a square or rectangular. If I'm doing a circle sign, I change my settings to a vectorized no fill, change my power settings to a setting that will not mark it, and then it will trace the outline of the circle so that I can line it up perfectly with the home position. And I'm just going to frame that one more time just to make sure that my board is perfectly lined up. Now we're going to finally move on to part 1 of our engraving. So we are taking the Minion part 1. Okay, let's make this nice and big so you can see what I'm using. Now I am flipping mine because I'm using a camera in my laser bed for you guys to be able to see these engravings as they're going along in time lapse. When I'm doing line-to-line tracing, I like to keep mine on smooth. Now my brightness is 105. The contrast is 96. I have the black and white turned off. We're doing line-to-line tracing, horizontal, and 7 lines. And 7 lines is just perfect. Okay, so for our target image, our speed, we are going to go at 3,000 millimeters per minute. Our laser mode is dynamic power. I'm using a 5% minimum, a 95% maximum. I will auto size our very first file that we will engrave, and I will click create. So I'll let LASERGRBL process that, and here we go. So I'm just going to press the home button. So you'll see our first pass is going to be 35 minutes and 18 seconds. And we're going to press play. So watch our projected time here because it does sometimes change. The projected time tries to give you a close estimate on how long it's going to take. Now I've opened up my interactive sliders by pressing down at the bottom right of LASERGRBL where you see the S1, G1, and G0. Okay, so you'll notice I had it on 1, 1, and 1. Here you could change it if it's not dark enough for you. Okay, so you can either lower the speed or up the power, but because we're at 95%, you're really not going to up it that much. So I suggest slowing down the linear. And we're almost done here. So here we go. Here's a close-up of what our first pass turned out as. And that's not too bad. So here you could decide to do a second pass if you would like. It is completely up to you. For me, I'm just doing that one pass because I've incorporated this layer into the second file as well to get it deeper. So let's move on to part 2. So we're going to go to Minion, part 2, and we're going to open that. Make that nice and big. I am going to save all the same settings that I used previously, okay? I'm flipping it though, again, for the camera. And so you'll see I have my grayscale in there, and I'm going to go to next. I'm going to keep all the same power, all the same speeds. I'm not going to auto size it because it is the same exact size file that I opened before, but I'm just adding that grayscale portion. So I'm going to press home. Okay, I will get my linear, and I decided for my white space scanning here, I would try at half speed. Now half speed doubled up my engraving time. As you can see, it's 53 minutes now, projected time. I'm going to press play, and I'm going to see how that is lining up. And here's another camera angle from the front. So this is when you want to make sure that your second part is lining up. And again, we're going over the black that we initially did with our first pass. And it's lining up perfect. And then that little tab there that you see in between evil and genius, that's what I had put to gray. So it is lowering that level as well. But I'm very happy with how that's lining up, because we want the level that has the lettering and the graphics on it. We want that on the top level. So there you go. We're 2D engraving. Woohoo! Now this is how your second pass should look. Now we're getting more defined layers. So remember, do not shut off your machine or move your material, because we've got some more passes to go. So let's get into part number 3. So we're going to file, open the file, and we're going to go to Minion Part 3 and open that. And again, I'm going to flip that around. Now I'm not changing any of my settings whatsoever. I kind of wish I had lowered my engraving speed to maybe about 2700. It would have made it a little bit more easier to sponge paint. So I do recommend that you might want to slow down the speed just a little bit. Okay, I am going to keep the brightness and the contrast the same. But like I said, I wish I had lowered my speed just a little bit. And I'm going to click on Create. I'm not going to auto size it, because remember, all these files are designed to size. And in a second, LaserGRBL is going to open up that one. Okay, so our projected time is 42 minutes for this one. But if you look at bottom right-hand side, I still have this at half rapid speed. So if you remember, I did the first pass at regular default rapid speed, which is 1.0. And then the second one, I had used the slider to change the rapid speed to the half. And so I thought this file should line up perfectly using it at half speed. Well, you can see my outline around the lettering, and it's not an even outline, so it's not lining up perfectly. So bottom right, I hit the stop sign right away. It stops your engraving right away. Then I will hit the reset and I will home. And that's why we'll engrave using the home position or offset, because once you press the stop button and the reset button, you will lose any coordinates that you jogged your laser to. It resets it all. I do not recommend using the stop square red button there at the top. You get a delayed stopping action because your computer has already sent the G code. So what I did was change my rapid to its default at 1 speed, homed it, played it, and it lined up perfectly. So I should have just trusted my OLM3 did a perfect job at lining up. If yours isn't lining up, well, you might have to do the opposite and changed it down to the half speed. So I'm confident that I can engrave at the 1 speed, the default speed, each and every time, and I'm going to have everything lined up. Okay, I know I said there were 3 parts, but after I looked at the sign, and I've done this with the Christmas sign that you saw before, I'm actually going to take a part of this and I'm going to outline it to give the minion and his layer a little more definition. So I've made him black. I still have my white bounding box there. I'm going to export it. Again, we're going to name this Minion Part 4. Now this layer is totally up to you. I like the effect that it did, and I've done it to lettering as well. So I'm going to rotate that again. I'm going to make that nice and big, so I've rotated them. Okay, I'm changing the outline for smooth. I have him on vectorize, and you'll see the settings that I like. I do have adaptive quality on and no filling. So I'm going to go next with that. And the speed I'm going to use is 2300. I'm not going to auto size it because he should already be to size. So I'm going to home my machine. Now I'm just going to frame it. And honestly, I was just unsure if I had flipped it the right way. But I'm just making sure that the outline is going to line up to where I want to put the vectorized line. And yep, it lined up perfectly. So as soon as that shoots home, I will home that, and I'm going to press play. So there's my first outline, just to give a little more definition. I decided, what the heck, that looked pretty good. I decided to do it one more time. Because its projected time was only 10 seconds. And I thought it looked pretty cool. I couldn't go wrong with 10 seconds of time. There, completed. So let's take a look at that. With my machine turned off, I am now going to carefully and slowly move my laser gantry out of the way. And let's take a good look at this sign here. There we go. A little bit better view there without the glasses on. Now you'll see the part Minions with Lasers behind this door. There's quite a bit of charring I got on the one level, and it kind of engraved the color out again. So I changed your files that I'm going to be uploading, and you shouldn't have that issue. So you'll see our gray there, our second layer. I thought it was high enough for me to be able to sponge paint without getting those wood grain lines in the way. And that's why I'm going to suggest that you slow it down to, say, 2700 or even 2800. So that's why your files are going to look a little bit different. You know, I'm not perfect. We make mistakes too. I make mistakes, so you don't have to. And now we're going to paint. I'm not going to go into full detail there, but I'm going to show you that my favorite brushes are these Oriental brushes. I'm just using the plain Deco Art Dollarama craft paint. I did have some other Craft Smart paints. Some of them are satin finish. I do not recommend satin finish. Satin finish is fine if you're doing pour painting, but not painting on wood. You don't get very good coverage. So I'm going to take a cosmetic sponge. You can get a whole bag of these for like $1 or $2. I'm going to cut it, and it's not because I'm cheap, trying to save on $1 or $2 big bag of cosmetic sponges. I'm just making these down to a more manageable size when I'm doing smaller and getting into tighter spots, so I'm not painting something else accidentally. Now I find the sides of the cosmetic sponges are about the flattest. So I did put a dab of the white paint around, and you might have seen me spin the plate around as well, because I'll do that to the far side of the plate when I'm putting the paint on the plate, just in case there's any clumps or splatter caused from the bottle. Then I spin the plate to where it's closer to me. So I'm dabbing the cosmetic sponge in the paint, but then I'm dabbing the excess paint off on the sponge, just on a bare spot on the plate. I am using very minimal pressure, okay? Just pretty much the sponge touches the board and I bring it back up. Now, the reason I use the undercoating is acrylic paints can be pretty thin, especially the yellows. So that's why I gave where we're going to be painting the minion and where the red was going, I gave that an undercoat of white, so that helps the colors pop. Yellow seems to be like the thinnest paint that it is, so it would take so many layers had I not put that white coat down. So there we go. We've got the minion. I'm doing some blending. I've got my blues in there. So for a thorough full tutorial on how I paint with the water, I add the water and roll the brush using fine brushes to keep the tips. So check out the Alice in Wonderland on Live Edge on my channel. It's a full tutorial on how to paint your laser engraving. Now I ended up filling in the Minions with Lasers part, going over it with the red with a cosmetic sponge and outlining all the lettering. So that's why I'm recommending to slow down your pass number 3, just so you can get dark engraving and you don't have to do as much painting as I did. The red that's over top with the minions, it will take a few coats, and I also brought in a little bit of orange on my cosmetic sponge as well, just to brighten it up. And that's it. We're all done. So if you do any of these signs, please make sure you join DiSignsCdn on Facebook. Post your pictures. I'd love to see your work. So please like and subscribe and go create.